They left me behind, alive, bleeding, watching them disappear. People say war is chaos, but what I remember most is the silence after they were gone. Not peace, just the cold weight of being abandoned. That's the part that never left me. Not the pain, not even the blood. Just that silence, the kind of silence that doesn't mean peace, but abandonment. I lay there in the dirt, face pressed into the roots of some jungle tree I couldn't name, and I listened to the last of the gunfire fade into the canopy. That was the moment I knew they were gone. My name is Jack Carter, Bravo Company, 19 years old when we dropped into that patch of nowhere. Before the ambush, before the screaming, before the blood, we were laughing. Someone passed around a pack of chewing gum like it was gold. My buddy Lance said something about writing his girl back home. We didn't think we were in danger. Not really. That's how it always starts, the lie that you're prepared. It happened in seconds. We were on patrol, maybe a mile out from the last known LZ, when the first shots cracked through the trees. AKs, fast, brutal. I hit the ground, mud sprang up into my mouth. My hands moved on instinct, rifle up, eyes darting. I saw movement. I fired. Then the blast came from the side, sharp, blinding, heat ripping through my ribs. I don't remember falling. 1 second I was fighting, the next I was staring at the dirt, too stunned to move. I must have blacked out. When I came to, the jungle was quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of quiet that tells you the world moved on without you. I couldn't stand. I couldn't even shout. I pushed myself up with one arm, dragging my body toward where I thought the others had gone. My other hand pressed hard to my side, trying to hold everything in. I called out, once, twice. My voice sounded strange, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I waved my hand, hoping someone would see. But there was no one left to see. The trees didn't answer. The trail was cold. The sun kept rising, as if nothing had happened, as if I wasn't lying there, broken and bleeding, wondering why no one came back. The first day, I told myself they'd return. Maybe they had to retreat. Maybe they were regrouping. Maybe someone was scanning their area for survivors. I pictured the helicopter landing, the dust kicking up, Lance hopping out and yelling my name. I clung to that image like a rope, but night came and no one came with it. I lay awake, trembling in the dark, listening to the sounds I couldn't name. Things moved in the underbrush. Something hissed near my boot. The pain in my side pulsed with every heartbeat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't cry. I just stared up at the black sky through the tangled branches and wondered how many people had died alone in a place like this. The second day was worse. My mouth was so dry it felt like sand. I started crawling, slow, painful inches, toward where I hoped water might be. My limbs were heavy, my vision blurred. I kept thinking I heard voices, but they were always in my head. Memories, maybe, or hallucinations already creeping in. I found a puddle eventually, shallow, brown, buzzing with insects. I drank it like it was the purest water on earth. Didn't care. My hands shook the whole time. That was when I accepted it. They weren't coming back, not because they were cowards, not because they didn't care. Maybe they never even saw me fall. Maybe in the chaos, I was just another body on the ground. It didn't matter. What mattered was I was alone, and something inside me broke. But another part, some deep, buried thing, hardened in its place. If no one was coming, then I had to go, had to move, had to survive. Because dying there, alone, forgotten. That wasn't going to be the end of my story. Not if I had anything left in me. Not if I could still crawl. Not if I still remembered who I was. The jungle wasn't just a place. It was alive. It watched me, tested me, pressed against my skin with a weight that grew heavier each day. After realizing no one was coming back, I began to move. Not because I had strength, but because I refused to die where I was left. I didn't have a plan. There was no map in my head, no clear direction, just forward. Forward meant hope. Back meant death. Every step was pain. My side screamed with every movement. The wound was swollen and hot to the touch. I knew infection was setting in. I couldn't clean it properly, couldn't stop the bleeding fully. I had tied my shirt into a crude dressing, and it was already soaked through. But it didn't matter. If I stopped to care, I wouldn't move at all. The first hours were spent dragging myself through the mud, grabbing vines to haul myself up over roots and through thickets that tore at my arms and face. My boots were waterlogged, my hands raw. But I didn't think about the pain. I thought about the men who had already died, about Lance, about the body I'd seen just before everything went black. He was still out there, somewhere. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, if I found help, someone else might still have a chance too. The air was thick and wet, each breath a task. Mosquitoes hovered constantly. Leeches found me quickly. I didn't bother pulling them off after the third one. There were too many, and they were the least of my worries. Hunger set in fast. I hadn't eaten since the day before the ambush. My stomach twisted into itself. I searched for berries, leaves, anything that didn't smell like death. I chewed on vines, drank from puddles, and once ate a beetle just to have something in my mouth. I moved only in the early morning and late afternoon, when the heat wasn't crushing. The sun, during midday, was unbearable. I'd find shelter under large leaves or curl up in the shadow of a rock. I didn't sleep much, maybe for minutes at a time. Every rustle in the leaves made my heart leap. At night, it was worse. The darkness was absolute, like being buried alive. I held my rifle close, though I didn't know what I'd do with it if something attacked me. It was more comfort than weapon now. I remember one night clearly. The sky had opened up, rain coming down so hard it sounded like machine gun fire on the leaves. I huddled under a tree, shivering, soaked, the wound in my side stinging with every drop. I started to laugh. I don't know why. Something in my mind cracked a little. The absurdity of it all. Me, a 19-year-old kid, alone in a war zone, talking to the trees and praying to a God I hadn't believed in since I was 12. But I prayed anyway. I prayed for something, anything, to find me. It was on the 5th day that I heard them. Footsteps. I froze in place. Not imagined this time, not hallucinations. Real, deliberate footsteps. Voices speaking low in a language I didn't understand. Vietnamese. I pressed myself against the base of a tree and didn't move. They were close, too close. I could hear the metal of their rifles clinking softly, the squish of boots in the wet ground. 3 men passed by. One of them stopped right in front of where I lay hidden. He looked around, scanned the trees. I held my breath so hard it felt like my lungs might explode. I didn't blink. I didn't move a muscle. He stood for what felt like a lifetime, then turned and walked on. I stayed there for hours after they were gone, afraid to even lift my head. When I finally did, my heart was still racing. That was the moment I realized how thin the line was between life and death, between being found and being killed. That night, I dreamed of home, not in flashes like before, but vividly. My mother was on the porch, peeling apples. My sister was playing with our dog in the front yard. I was watching, holding a glass of lemonade. Everything was warm and soft and quiet. I woke up crying. By the sixth day, I found a small stream. It wasn't clean, but it was moving. I drank and filled my helmet. I bathed my face, my hands. It gave me the strength to keep going. I followed it downstream, hoping it might lead to something, anything. I saw broken branches that looked like someone had passed through. I found a torn piece of fabric caught on a tree. Maybe someone had made it out this way. Maybe I could too, but the jungle had other plans. On the seventh day, I tripped on a root and landed hard, face first, into the mud. My vision swam. I couldn't get up right away. I just lay there, listening to the insects crawl over me, letting the weight of everything press me into the earth. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe I wouldn't move again. Then I heard something, distant, low, steady. A helicopter. I pushed myself up, screamed, waved, fell over, got up again. My voice was hoarse, nearly gone, but I yelled with everything I had. The chopper moved closer, and for a moment, I thought they'd seen me. Then it curved away. I stood there, hands still raised, too weak to curse, too tired to cry. And still, I didn't quit, because something inside me, something I didn't even know I had, kept whispering, "Not here, not like this." And so I walked, or limped, or crawled, or dragged myself through whatever tried to stop me, because I hadn't come this far just to die where no one would ever find me. Not Jack Carter. Not me. By the eighth day, I was no longer a soldier. I was something else, reduced to instinct and will. The jungle had taken everything it could from me, my strength, my voice, my sense of time. All that remained was the rhythm of breath and the stubborn refusal to surrender. My body was a map of pain. The infection had spread. My side pulsed with fever, and the skin around the wound had gone tight and red. I had stopped checking it. If I looked too closely, I'd see how close I was to death. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to keep moving. Movement meant hope. Stillness meant the end. The hallucinations began as whispers. I heard my father's voice one morning, clear and unmistakable. He died when I was 13, but there he was, standing between two trees, arms crossed, nodding like he used to when he was proud of me. I blinked, and he vanished. Later, I saw my high school baseball coach, holding a clipboard and shaking his head like I'd missed a play. And then I saw Lance. He looked just as he did the morning we landed, helmet low over his eyes, grin half-cocked, that stupid Lucky Strike hanging from his mouth. He didn't say anything, just walked beside me for a while. It should have scared me, but it didn't. I welcomed the company. Sometimes I talked to them, not out loud at first, then louder. I knew it wasn't real, but I didn't care. Loneliness becomes unbearable after a while. It presses against your skin like the heat, like the hunger. You start to question what's worse, dying or going unnoticed by the world as you disappear. On the 9th day, I stumbled across a clearing where the remnants of a temporary camp still lingered. There was a rusted ration can, a fire pit, even a crumpled map half soaked through from rain. I examined it for clues, trying to orient myself. Most of the markings were gone, ink bleeding into paper, but I recognized a shape, a river bend. I knew that river. I had crossed it 2 days earlier. So, I was going in circles. The realization nearly broke me. I sank to my knees and felt the weight of it collapse on my chest. I screamed into the empty trees. The sound echoed back at me like laughter. But I didn't stay down. Something inside me pushed me to stand. That same instinct that had dragged me out of the mud the first day was still there. Bruised, starved, delirious, but burning. I changed direction, this time using the sun, my only compass. I traveled only in daylight now. At night, I curled under broken trees and branches, making shelters from whatever I could find. Sleep came in short bursts. I woke up often, unsure if I was still alive. By the 10th day, I had stopped caring how I looked. My skin was cracked and covered in bites. My uniform was shredded. I smelled like rot and damp cloth. My boots were falling apart, soles nearly torn clean off. I wrapped them in vines just to keep walking. That morning, I heard gunfire, not near, but far enough to be hopeful. I followed it, hoping to find someone. Friend or enemy didn't matter. I needed someone to see me, to know I was real. I found the aftermath hours later, a scorched patch of earth, empty shell casings, 2 lifeless bodies in black pajamas, NVA, I assumed. I didn't linger. Death was a companion now. I'd stopped fearing it. I just didn't want to join them yet. On the 11th day, the weather changed. Clouds rolled in, low and heavy. The air grew thick and still. The rain came that night, not like before. This was torrential, biblical. It drowned everything. My shelter collapsed. I curled under a fallen log, shivering, coughing so hard my chest burned. That was the night I asked myself the question I'd avoided since the beginning. What if I didn't make it? Not because I gave up, but because I was simply too far gone. I didn't have an answer, but I did have a choice. I could lie there and wait, or I could drag myself forward, even if it killed me. Because at least then, I would have done everything I could. So I crawled out from under the log and kept moving. On the 12th morning, I crested a ridge and saw it, a black speck in the sky, a helicopter. I blinked, thinking it might be another hallucination, but then I heard it, the thrum of rotor blades. My heart exploded in my chest. I screamed, waved my arms, staggered into the open. The helicopter passed overhead, banking slowly. Then it turned. It was coming back. I dropped to my knees, exhausted, tears mixing with the rain on my face. I couldn't believe it. After everything, after the silence, the madness, the loneliness, I was seen. Minutes later, I was in the chopper, wrapped in a blanket, a medic pressing gauze to my wound. I couldn't speak. My voice was gone, but I held his hand tightly as if he might disappear too. They didn't ask me what happened, not right away. They let me rest. I remember the wind from the open door, the jungle shrinking beneath us. I watched it disappear, the trees folding into each other like secrets never meant to be told. And I felt something I hadn't felt in nearly 2 weeks. Relief, not peace. That would take years. But for the first time, I knew I wasn't going to die alone. Coming home didn't feel like coming home. When the plane touched down and I walked through the terminal, I expected something. Closure, gratitude, maybe even pride. But all I felt was distance. Everything looked familiar, but it all felt foreign. I'd survived the impossible, and yet I stood in the middle of my own country like a ghost. People smiled, offered their hands, called me hero. I nodded, said thank you, and kept walking. My sister was waiting with tears in her eyes. She hugged me tight, said she'd prayed every night. I told her I was fine. It was a lie. I didn't know what I was anymore. I wasn't the boy who left. I wasn't even sure I was the man who came back. The hospital patched up what it could. The infection was worse than they'd expected, and I spent weeks recovering. I barely spoke. The nurses were kind, but their words didn't reach me. I stared out the window most days, watching clouds pass like they had in the jungle, feeling like I had left the real version of myself behind. They gave me medals. They told me I was lucky. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt like a man who had seen something no one else around him could understand. I was alive, yes, but part of me was still lying on that jungle floor, waiting for footsteps that never came. I tried to reintegrate, got a job in a warehouse, then another in construction. I kept my head down, worked hard, didn't ask for much. At night, the dreams came. Not every night, but enough. Sometimes I was crawling again, calling for help. Sometimes I saw Lance, standing in the river, asking why I didn't save him. I'd wake up soaked in sweat, heart racing, and lie there in the dark trying to convince myself it was over. I didn't talk about what happened, not to my sister, not to the guys at work, not even to the other veterans. We all had stories. Most of us chose to carry them in silence. Mine felt different. It wasn't just what I saw, it was what I'd felt. The betrayal of being forgotten. The deep, cutting truth that even in a world filled with brothers in arms, you can still be left behind. I got married. Her name was Claire. She was patient, gentle in a way you don't see much anymore. I didn't tell her everything at first, just the outline, just enough to make sense of the scars. She didn't press. Maybe she knew that asking too soon would break something fragile in me. We had a son. I named him Lance. Years passed. I learned how to hide the worst parts, how to smile when people asked, "How was it over there?" I learned how to change the subject, how to bury the rage that surfaced when someone called me lucky or brave or one of the lucky ones who made it back. I wasn't lucky. I was left. That truth sat in my chest like a stone. Heavy. Always there. It wasn't until I was in my late 40s that I finally said it out loud. I was sitting across from a therapist at the VA, a woman who looked at me with the kind of stillness that made you believe she wouldn't flinch no matter what you said. And I told her everything, from the moment I hit the ground to the moment I was lifted into that helicopter, every ache, every hallucination, every night I begged not to wake up again. She didn't say it was brave. She didn't say it was powerful. She said, "That wasn't your fault." And for the first time, I believed her. Something shifted in me that day. I started talking, not just to her, but to my son, to my wife. I told them things I thought I'd take to my grave. I told them how it felt to scream into the jungle and hear nothing back, how I made peace with dying before I ever found the will to live again. I started speaking at high schools, veterans' halls, even church groups, not because I wanted recognition, but because someone out there might need to hear the truth. Not the kind wrapped in flags and slogans, but the kind that says survival is ugly, lonely, and doesn't always feel like a blessing. I tell them that courage isn't walking into battle. It's dragging yourself forward when you're convinced no one is coming for you. I tell them that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about understanding why the pain exists and letting it breathe. I tell them about Jack Carter, the 19-year-old kid who was left to die, who clawed his way through fear, through hunger, through the weight of being invisible, and who came back not as a hero, but as a witness. And I always end with this: I wasn't saved, I wasn't rescued, I survived because I refused to be erased. And if you're still here, watching this, maybe there's a part of you that refuses to disappear too. You're not alone. There are others like me, like him, like her. Watch the next story in the description. See what it takes to come back.